13, now considered as a cult classic by many, initially had poor sales back at its release that cancelled any plans for a potential sequel and left us on a cliffhanger. This video will cover the entirety of 13's 34 missions, while reviewing the game, as well as talk about the remake and then make sense of the story of the game with the informations that we've got, which means that it will be a spoiler fiesta. All of this will be done in hope that at the end, you'll be able to have your own opinion on 13, and if you already have one, then maybe we can compare what we both think. Now, without further ado, let's begin. The game starts with us washed up on the beach, wounded by a bullet and suffering amnesia, but today is our lucky day. Janet, a lifeguard, is nearby. She will help us walk to her car. As we walk behind Janet, we hear the sounds of a helicopter, which remind us of what happened before we lose consciousness. We were on a boat, cornered by a few gunmen. Having no other choices, we jumped into the water and got shot. The sound of the helicopter reminded us of that. We now are back on the beach, but not for long, as we're about to faint. Janet won't let us down. We'll wake up on a bed inside the first aid post. Janet is currently on the phone with one of her colleagues in order to send us to the hospital to be sure we're okay. But unfortunately for Janet, we won't ever go there.
Who's that?
Before dying, Janet gave us an important clue. We had a key to Winslow Bank in our pocket, but we'll think deeper about that later. As for now, we have other problems to deal with. We'll find 3 knives on the body of Janet that we'll be able to use to defend ourselves. It might seem obvious, but we're currently wounded and only at 50% of our health gauge capacity, so we should remain careful. We'll find a gun, more knives, and something looking like an ashtray to incapacitate our sole enemy so far. We'll grab his gun, shoot his friend, and open the door. A few enemies dropping from a helicopter will try to stop us, but those are small fries. As we cross the dock to escape, we'll meet a few more henchmen. Some will try to shoot us from the cliff, while the rest will face us to stop our progression. But ultimately, we'll make our escape with a car. Next stop is Winslow Bank, New York. But before that, let's come back a few seconds to the opening scene to explain what we've seen. The first cutscene is obviously inspired by the assassination of John Kennedy. In this fictional world, the President of America, William Sheridan, is shot once by a sniper, and unfortunately won't make it. We then see the FBI searching the sniper nest for clues. What follows is a lack of proof, hampering the investigation by the FBI and the discontentment of a general from the army, named Carrington, who used to be good friends with the president, which led him to investigate by himself on the whole case. Short after, we see William's brother, named Walter Sheridan, campaigning to succeed his brother at the White House. We then, finally, toward the end of the cutscene, see the members of the conspiracy talking to each other. Now that the president is dead, they are ready to launch operation. The last thing we can notice is that all throughout the cutscene, we see somebody being tattooed with the number 13. We also see a mysterious character claiming that number 13 will soon no longer be a problem. We are number 13, and as you could tell, we're hunted. Now back to where we left off. The beginning of the mission, we'll simply be talking and working with the bank employee, but once we reach the vault, things will take a different turn. Before losing memory and going on that boat, we planted a bomb in that vault, alongside a briefcase full of important documents, in order to bait some members of the conspiracy and take them out. We were not alone in this endeavor, as there was a girl with us. We soon know her name. Now the problem is that we forgot all about that and fell in our own trap. Since the explosion did open up a path for escape, we'll follow it and get to some kind of tutorial. It is actually possible to sneak behind people and neutralize them silently. That's on paper, because this mechanic is a bit clunky, and honestly need more skill than you'd think to execute. Enemies in this game are really prone to notice you once you get too close to them, and will quickly grab their weapon, making them impossible to neutralize. So we need to act fast. Eventually, we'll unlock a skill later on that allows us to walk silently, and thus takedown will become much easier. That's not the only tutorial in this area. With the bomb exploding in the vault, Winslow Bank is now full of policemen that we cannot kill, but that we are allowed to neutralize. There is a few ways to neutralize enemies. We've just seen one, but sneaking up behind a guard to take him out is pretty situational, at least in 13. Another way will be to punch them until they fall unconscious, but that method is very taxing in terms of health points, as they'll shoot us while we do that. 13 features the possibility to grab items from the environment. Most of the time, it will be a chair, ashtray, bottle, or something like that, in order to attack our opponent. Those are considered non-lethal weapons, and can be used on targets that we cannot harm. This strategy offers us the possibility to neutralize someone in one hit, even if they notice us, as long as we do not miss, obviously. It is definitely the best way to deal with those policemen. Those items will remain useful throughout the whole game, as even if they are not lethal, they remain a one-hit KO, and as far as the player is concerned, lethal or not doesn't change anything, because enemies will never wake up anyway. We then arrive into a room with a man screaming on the phone that number 13 is still alive. Once done yapping, the policeman accompanying him will come in our direction, and that's the perfect moment to get rid of him and for us to pass. Soon after, we'll meet a woman whining about the alarm, wishing that the robber would take her hostage so they could shut it off, and we're gonna just do that. We'll use that woman to pass the next area full of policemen without getting hurt. Policemen will shoot you if you do not face them, so you always need to keep them in your sight to avoid getting hurt, but they'll also fire on you if you use an item, which is unfortunately needed, as the door to the elevator need a keycard to open. 13, at least the original version, works with two separate inventory, one for weapons and one for items. To use an item, like a key or a medikit, you need to select it before and then activate it. Medikit might not be the best example to take, since it's the only item in the game to have a shortcut, but you get what I mean. Every item has to be picked in the inventory outside of the medikit due to the fact it's important to be able to heal quickly. The remake does things differently, but for now we'll talk exclusively about the classic version and keep the comparison with the remake for the end of the video. Right after taking the elevator, we'll witness a policeman getting shot by what we'll call a robber. Policemen are no more, they were taken out by those robbers. We can finally use our guns, but not for very long, as we're almost at the end of that level. As we escape the building, we'll come face to face with the FBI. They'll arrest us for the murder of William Sheridan, President of the United States of America. As we're being interrogated by the FBI, a loud noise is heard, which leads all of the cops in the room to leave to check what's happening. A few seconds later, we'll meet the woman that planted the bomb in the vault with us. She used her gun to shoot the cuffs, holding us down to her chair. We are now free to move and have to meet with her on the roof. We've also learned a few things. Her name is Steve Rowland. We used to be a member of the Special Assault Destruction Squads, or SPADs for short. We are supposed to have been dead for 2 years in Mexico, and while we do not remember anything, there is proof that we killed President William Sheridan. Now, those loud noises weren't for nothing. Armed men did enter the FBI headquarters and are looking for us. Once again, we have to avoid casualties in FBI ranks, but if those mercenaries kill them, and they will, then it's not a problem. The mission starts as some kind of stealth mission, where we take enemies by surprise, to finally become much more straightforward toward the end. A few FBI agents without weapons won't do anything, but those that have a gun will use it. It is actually possible for the FBI agents to survive in this mission. It is unscripted, but saving their life won't make them any kinder toward us. So it is in our best interest that they fight the enemy while we sneak through the vents. Toward the middle of the mission, we'll pass through a hole made by the mercenaries to enter a crappy, abandoned building that we'll cross to reach the rooftops. Lots of gunfights happen there, not much to say about them. 13 is a FPS, no shit Sherlock, but a pretty old school one. There is no iron sight in 13. The right click will instead activate what the game calls alternate fire, which can vary from a zoom for the sniper, firing a grenade on the M16, or simply alternating from burst to auto on the AK. There are many more obviously, as almost every weapon have one. The gameplay is pretty satisfying, and often allow for stealth takedown with silent weapons. The weapons also feel great to use, but you gotta love older games for that, as it really feels nothing like recent FPS. If you're into FPS such as Time Splitters, GoldenEye or Perfect Dark, while not exactly the same, there are more chances that you like it. Now that we are on the rooftops, we'll meet again with that girl that helped us. Her name is Major Jones, and she's the first officer for General Carrington that we saw in the opening sequence. She seems to know more about us than we do about her so far. She also claimed that the General Carrington went missing 3 days ago, as he was conducting an investigation on the president's death, and that he's the only one that can help us prove our innocence. Jones will give us a grappling hook in order to follow her, an item that we'll obviously use again in the future missions. For now, we'll have to follow Jones as she leads the way. We'll accompany her for the entirety of this map. And while it doesn't change much, it's always a welcome change to have an ally from time to time. As you could have easily guessed by the name of the map, Rooftops is a map with a strong focus on sniping, but that's not all. We'll be running quite a lot here too. As we press forward, we'll meet enemies hiding in a building. Jones will throw her best grenade for a pretty satisfying result. When we're about to reach the helicopter and escape, we receive news that Carrington was arrested by General Stanwell, and that he is being held at Emerald, an army base hidden in the mountains, and that's where we're going now. The next 5 missions are linked together, and are some of my favorite in the entire game. They are quite diverse from each other, and honestly, who doesn't like snow levels? As we arrive in Emerald Base, we notice a member of the Spads executing coldly a GI. This isn't the last time this is gonna happen. Emerald Base is currently being taken over by the Spads, and the GI are being executed in great number. In this mission, we'll have a crossbow at our disposal, both silent and deadly. Every headshot will grant us a kill cam, one of the most satisfying weapons in the game for sure. That is, if you aim for the head, because body shots will deal ridiculous damage, and unfortunately, the crossbow can only store 1 bolt at a time, so failing to headshot your target might backfire heavily. Some weapons, such as the pistol, do not offer 1-hit kill on headshots. Some others, such as the knife or the crossbow that we just mentioned, do ridiculously low damage on every part of the body but the head, where it is instant kill. Later on in the game, we'll eventually get a crossbow able to load 3 bolts at once, but we'll need to wait a while longer to reach it. We'll reconnect the power supply, cross the bridge, use our grappling hook in order to stealthily get inside the base, and we are now in the next mission. In this mission, we need to infiltrate the base. However, before that we have to deactivate all the alarms, which will ask us to get rid of most enemies silently. Crossbow is obviously the best weapon here, and this is no surprise that this map is my favorite in the entire game. Each enemy here is positioned in a way that you can pick them up without alerting anybody else. It isn't necessarily a very challenging mission, but it's not so easy that it becomes boring. Sometimes, enemies won't be staying alone, but instead they'll be grouped with another one. There we have 2 solutions. Either we count on their slow reaction time to quickly take one out with a crossbow, then reload and quickly kill the other one after, or we use something louder, such as the AK, since the sound detection is quite generous, and in the end, why would it not be? They've been killing GIs with the same weapon all day. Another few gunshots won't change much. I'm obviously finding excuses there. While the silent weapons are really useful and safer to use, there is plenty of missions where being loud at the right time won't alert anybody, especially if there is door separating you from them. Once done with all the alarms, we can finally take the ladder and infiltrate the base to save the General Carrington. As we crawl through the vents, we'll hear 2 generals talking. Once they leave, we can break the grid and enter the office. There, we'll be able to check the camera to see the position of the enemies, to know when to open the door. We'll also notice there that we can see the enemies walking. Yes, I really mean it when I say see. 13 features sound similar to a comic book, Those enemies walking will simply show a few taps on screen that help us know where they are and where they are going. It is extremely useful in stealth sequences to know when you can open the door to take someone by surprise. After killing all the enemies on this level, we'll grab ammunition from the storage room and take the elevator. Once up, we'll clean the area and find a grid that leads us to a ladder. Upon reaching the top, we'll now have to make our way down by using the grappling hook in a similar fashion to what Mission Impossible did 7 years earlier. Short after that, we'll kill more spads and find a keycard, which will lead to reinforcement trying to ambush us. Next area has a guard talking to himself. Since he is distracted, it won't be very hard to get rid of him. Later on, we'll find a document in a guard room. That room is completely optional and loaded with guards, but the reward is there, as that special document will remind us on how to dual-wield guns, most notably the pistols and Uzi. We've already unlocked the stunning and sixth sense skill at the Winslow Bank. Those were in the briefcase next to the bomb. Now, back to save the General Carrington. We'll crawl through more vents and we'll end up in front of his cell. Before that, we'll notice a small secret here that leads to a bit of armor, which is always useful. Because 13 is a pretty old school game, it is played with health and armor gauge. You can easily restore your health by using medikits that you can carry, but armor is a bit more difficult to find. You'll also notice that there is 2 different armor gauge, one for the head and one for the body. Most of the time you'll keep the armor for the head much longer, which makes sense. As we get closer to Carrington, something he says gives us a flashback. Now that we found Carrington, we're gonna have to escape, and as you might expect, it's not gonna be that easy.
Ready, son?
Hey, errand boy, come here. I gotta take another leak.
I'm gonna kill him.
Ah! Well done. Cover me. This way.
Next mission requires us to leave the base with a cable car, but before that, we'll need to restore electricity. It is a pretty short mission, and I want you to notice something here. This mission is a follow-up to the 3 previous missions. So we'll start it with the equipment we've had at the end of the last mission, which is something that I personally love. It isn't unique to this mission. As we play throughout the game, we'll have lots of missions linked together this way, and stocking ammo for one weapon might prove useful later on, if there is a tough area that requires either stealth or muscle. There is a problem, although not a huge one. 13 doesn't allow you to select a level once you're done with the campaign. You always have to restart from the very beginning and play each mission in order. That is unless you use a cheat code. Those allow you to pick up the level you wanna play. I'll show you on screen how to do right now. Those cheat codes, while allowing you to start from any mission you desire, also make you start without anything. And it kinda makes sense, since when we get here, we are supposed to have all the loots from the previous missions. Now, obviously, there are other cheat codes such as the one to obtain all weapons with maximum ammunitions, and if fun is what you're looking for, then you should have it. In the worst case, starting a mission like this one without any weapon isn't necessarily a death sentence either, but it's much harder for sure. Now, back to the mission. We're together with General Carrington, and while we have to protect him, he won't ever make himself stupidly in danger for no reason, so on that part, we're fine. We'll search around in the cable car station to find out that we need a fuse. That fuse is in the storeroom outside, but to enter there, we first need a keycard. Apparently, O'Neill has the keycard. Now we just have to find which one of them O'Neill is. Found him. Now we can go back to the storeroom and get that fuse. As we finally grab it, Spad's reinforcements arrive. We have no other choice but to get rid of them. Now we'll stick the fuse in the fuse box, activate the cable car, and then join General Carrington once again. There will be one final wave of enemies before it's settled, and once we're finally done with them, General Carrington will offer us something. a sniper for what's incoming in the next mission. Carrington will offer us precious informations there. There is 20 members of the conspiracy. Each of them have a number. They are the one responsible for the death of the president, not us. We are actually not Steve Rowland. Steve Rowland was number 13. He killed the president and then was betrayed and killed by the other conspirators that hired the Mongoose to do the job. That's all we'll hear for now. The Spads won't leave us time to hear more from General Carrington, as they ambush us and destroy our cable car. As we make our escape with the grappling hook, the cable car falls to the ground. It was a close one. Our next objective is to protect and escort General Carrington to the evacuation site where Jones is waiting for us. Here, we'll be ambushed over and over again until we reach Jones. Once arrived, we learned that the chopper won't start. We'll have to delay the enemies until Jones and Carrington fix that problem. Normally we're supposed to use a Gatling gun during that objective, but I'll be honest, I just didn't see it, so we're gonna stick to our guns instead. We'll face many enemies here, but ammunition won't be a problem, since we kept everything we've looted in the 4 previous missions, and we're loaded by now. Once done fixing the helicopter, we'll board it. Our next destination is Kelowna Lake, where one of Carrington's allies, Kim, needs our help. The henchmen of the Mongoose are getting closer. We have to find her first. Our arsenal in this mission is reset, since the previous chain of missions is over. We'll start with 3 weapons, one of them completely new. If the revolver and shotgun pack a punch, the hunting rifle doesn't lag behind either. That weapon is almost always a one-hit kill in the chest from short to medium distances. Its weakness, only 2 cartridges at a time. We gotta be careful to not be overwhelmed. As for its alternate fire, it's simply a gunstock blow, which I didn't find particularly useful, but since I didn't try it more than a few times, I cannot tell if it's strong or not. As we continue forward, we'll meet a few henchmen of the Mongoose around the snowman. That snowman is actually a dead body. Maybe another mercenary or a civilian. What's certain is that they killed him. We'll now have to walk on ice to reach the next part of this level. Dropping into water would lead to us taking serious damage. Once on the other side, after walking in the woods for a while, we'll get completely surrounded by 5 enemies. One more enemy awaits us at the waterfall. Then we finally reach the cabin, which leads us to the next mission.
Don't move! My God, you're alive!
Kim, the girl in the photo.
The surgeon did an outstanding job.
It's coming to. Increase the dose of safentamine.
Shall I start the tattoo?
Go ahead.
How do you feel, son? This is the widow of Steve Rowland, the man whose identity you've taken.
Steve was number 13. I was 17. The leaders of the conspiracy had my husband killed by the Mongoose. But Steve managed to drag himself back here before dying. One day, I'll know the faces of those who betrayed him.
I want them all to burn. You hear me? Even number 1. And I want to find the bastard who put the hit on my friend Sheridan. And why?
When they see Steve's ghost, they'll slip up.
They might also figure out you betrayed them, Kim.
We now understand that Kim Rowland is number 17, and is the widow of Steve Rowland, also known as 13. We took Steve's identity in order to overthrow the conspiracy, and in order to look exactly like him, we underwent facial surgery. Kim also tells us that she knows the identity of 3 members of the conspiracy, but that's all for now, because the Mongoose men caught up to us, and we now have to cover Kim's back while she escapes. In a flashback, we'll be reminded of Kim's secret weapon that we will use to defend ourselves. A M60, probably one of the strongest weapons in the entire game, as it has a crazy firepower with a magazine of 200 bullets. And since 13 has a reload system closer to something like GoldenEye and Call of Duty, it doesn't even take long to reload. Its weakness is that the bullets start to do stupidly low damage on targets that are far away, and that is not very precise. After covering her escape for a while, we hear from Jones that Kim is getting away on her own. Our goal is now to regroup with Jones and Carrington, but a mercenary will cause an avalanche, and we'll be stuck right in the middle. Mongoose henchmen will find us in the snow and capture us. Our next destination is gonna be the prison in Plain Rock. We'll quickly meet with Dr. Johansson, a neurosurgeon that seemed to like his job a little bit too much. Luckily, we are not next on the chopping block, but we have a few examples here of the marvelous work he might do on us. The reason for Dr. Johansson's interest seems to be linked to a request from the Mongoose that want to know who we are and if he finds traces of the 3 bullets that wounded Steve Rowland. Also, he obviously wants to know who works with us, but that goes without saying. A few cops will be taking us to the laundry room in hope to have some fun with us. We'll deal with them accordingly and start our escape from there. We'll crawl through the vents once again and then come back to meet the policeman from before. Obviously, the rule to not kill any policeman doesn't apply here. We can be trigger happy. Fast forward a few rooms, we'll meet a prisoner trying to escape. He'll help us by opening the door, but we'll do the crucial mistake of trying to kill us afterward. Barely 5 seconds after that incident, we'll find a water point leading us to the next mission. The Asylum is a mission with both armed enemies and civilians, so we gotta be careful who we fire at. It is also the first mission offering a boss fight, but certainly not the last. Another positive is the silencer on our pistol. We won't always have it, as it is considered like a different weapon from the usual pistol, but I like it. It does offer the same alternate fire as the usual pistol. You can dual wield it, but only the first gun will have a silencer, so I personally didn't do it. It's a weapon with pretty common type of ammunitions, and it doesn't make much noise, which is lovely, but it also lacks a lot of power. Crawling through more vents, we notice that Dr. Johansson isn't only a psychopath, but also a pig with the nurses, and as we walk on the roof, it breaks. We are now face to face with him. Johansson's weapon is nothing else than scalpels, that he either throws or tries to stab us with. Nothing too fancy, and last I've heard, a shotgun is more effective than scalpels when it is about killing people. Once dead, Johansson will prove to be number 20. We now have to escape. The nurse we've just helped get out of hell will support us in that endeavor. To be perfectly honest, we're supposed to use her as a body shield, but I decided to leave her out of this. As we escape from the asylum, we'll meet another nurse in the ambulance that look very similar to the other one we've just met. Shirley Hortwin. Next two maps are in the canyon, and those are definitely not my favorite. Maybe due to me having to replay them several times because of an audio bug in the cutscenes. Talking about bugs, 13 isn't a game that will start without a few tweaks here and there. And even with that, sometimes I still had a bug where cutscenes were silent, but I do think it is linked to me changing my keyboard from AZERTY to QWERTY to play the game. There is a guide on Steam that covers what you should do to be able to run the game more or less easily. And if you really desire to have it even easier, I believe the GOG version already have all the fixes included to be able to play directly. The game was also released on the PS2, Xbox and GameCube, if you own one of those. Before reaching the second canyon map, we'll be facing a small army. Let's be real, the AI isn't doing anything too crazy there, because since we were given a ton of rocket launcher ammunitions, I was actually supposed to cross that area using that weapon. Those enemies were grouped this way in order to grant fun to the player, like a playground where we can finally realize all the potential of our new toy. And while it obviously isn't really challenging, it does succeed in allowing you to use your brand new weapon, granted that you use it, not like me. Second canyon mission will have plenty of enemies armed with rocket launcher. Let's say that it's better to avoid getting hit. As we progress through the canyon, I'd like to talk quickly about 13's sound design. 13's soundtrack fits the game like a glove. It is of great quality and definitely adds to its identity. It was composed by Lionel Gage. You can find his YouTube channel in the description. I invite you to listen to his work there, if you were to like the game's OST in any way. Each level have adaptive tracks depending on the situation. If you're currently not fighting, it will be most of the time soft. However, if an enemy engages you in a fight, it will become louder. This helps in two ways. First of all, you'll always know when an enemy is after you, and secondly, loud music will make you react faster, since you'll understand unconsciously that there is danger. Adaptive music is something more common than we think in video games, and it definitely is doing a lot of good there. Some tracks are a little bit more aggressive than others, such as the Canyon, that escalate from being very soft and melodic to quite aggressive. But mission is full of rocket launchers, so you better be on your toes, and the game is there to help you with that. In some other FPS, sounds are often useful to hear the enemies, but 13 offers a lot of visual help in this case, such as the Sixth Sense or the sound of enemy steps visually represented by some small tap appearing on your screen. And as far as the voice acting and the other sounds go, it's all pretty good too. The main character was voiced by David Duchovny, which seems to be a pretty big deal for most people. However, since I've learned English in my 20s and never watched X-Files, I didn't even know who he was before playing that game. All the voice actors in 13 are quite decent, and if it's not at the same level as a game like BioShock, it never needed to be to begin with. We should now be close to Jones, waiting for us inside a plane. One last ambush, and we are gone to the next map.
Jones, finally. I feel like I've spent 3 months inside a tin can.
Okay. What do you say we hop on down to Mexico, Captain?
Margaritas on the beach?
More like Rangers and Red Berets. Tighten up your panties, we're going supersonic.
Colonel McCall runs the SPAD's training camp, and Kim suspects he's part of the conspiracy. You won't be running into many intellectuals down there, mostly black ops, knuckle draggers. This could be another one of that blonde's con jobs.
I trust her.
Uh-huh. You save her life, and she splits.
Jealous, Major?
Just get in the damn boat.
We'll now infiltrate the SPAD's camp via the sewage drain underwater. Another pretty short mission, we'll just have to get out of water once to open up the way to go further, and then, finally, to eliminate 2 guards on bridges, to finally cross a ravine. Upon reaching the end of the ravine, we'll hear the 2 generals we've heard in the Emerald Base talk to each other. Nothing too interesting will be said. They simply talk about us making problems for them, and not wanting to alert the other conspirators, since anyway the mongoose will probably deal with us. We'll crawl through more vents, in order to finally find the sewage drain of the shower room and infiltrate the camp. We'll then remember our name, Jason Fly. We used to be a SPAD's captain under the command of Steve Rowland. This mission is actually doable entirely stealthily. Actually, it's even the best way to do it, since there is a lot of enemies in there. We'll obviously once again be equipped with our trusty crossbow in order to aid us in that task, but we'll also be able to count on our silenced pistol in order to save a few bolts for the more important targets, because this mission actually doesn't shower us with bolts, and each shot missed is paid later on by having more enemies to kill, either with the pistol or by going loud. As we are getting closer to the tent, where the meeting between the conspirators will take place, we'll now have to hide the bodies of the guards we kill, in order to not alert anybody.
Gather round, gentlemen. This is number 11. Do you read me?
Affirmative. Go ahead, number 3.
Good evening, number 1. President Galbraith still believes in a simulated state of war and has just authorized the SPADs to supervise the army during the maneuvers. Over.
Good. Number 5.
I'll be receiving the list of those supporting the cause tomorrow. Number 9 will hand it to me at the plaza. Over.
Number 11.
The arms shipment will arrive tonight. My men are eager to serve the cause. Over.
Excellent. What about number 13?
I have his military file here. I removed it from the Pentagon to block the FBI's investigation.
Good. As for number 17, no need to continue this search. I have something here that she will definitely come and play. This meeting is adjourned, gentlemen. Good night.
Now that we're done listening to the meeting, we have one thing left to do: burn the ammunition depot, and for that, we'll use the good old-fashioned dynamite. And now it's time to go loud. Next mission will have us escape this hell, as the alarm rings and the whole base is after us. Toward half of the mission, we'll learn that the Spads found our boat, and that we have to find another way out. And as we're about to be back to the entrance, we'll meet the second boss of the game, Seymour McCall, a colonel from the Spads, and one of the two men talking about us earlier. Our only way out now seems to be through a submarine, and the next mission will be all about boarding it. Another one of my favorite missions. Here we'll have to cross the base and reach the submarine, but the problem is that giant doors will close before us if we're too slow. I do think that it is possible to sneak in before those doors close if we play it well. It's also possible to go loud and pass each of them as quickly as we can. Or there is also a lot of vents almost everywhere that will allow us to continue if the doors close. This mission is much bigger than it seems and have a few areas to explore. It is also stealth friendly, but we've used all of our bolts to infiltrate the base. We'll find a few more, but we'll be limited if we want to be silent. As we're getting close to the end of the level, we are greeted with a warm welcoming committee. Once done taking care of them, we board the submarine. We are now in a mission that is purely die and retry. It's not a hard mission per se, because once you know how to do it, you'll most likely succeed with a 100% rate. The problem here is that you cannot ring the alarm, and killing the wrong guard will instantly screw you. It's all based on knowledge, which isn't something that I personally despise, but that many do. Our goal here will simply be to contact Jones, then sneak in the officer's cabin to hide, and that's just what we're about to do. The next mission will begin with us being spotted. We have to escape through the torpedo airlock, and for that, we'll have to shoot our way through. One cool thing in this level is that we can break the glasses on the wall to steal the M16 left there for the crew members. Once we'll reach the end of the level, we'll have to face the third boss of the game, Captain Franklin Edelbright, also known as Number 7. As we grab the key to the torpedo airlock, we also grab a new weapon, the harpoon, and it will be very useful in the next mission. We are now out of the submarine, but we're in a hangar. The enemies are searching for us. Well, not exactly. They at first believe we're in the submarine, and that the crew is having everything under control. But as the crew won't answer their calls, they'll send divers to try to infiltrate it. Our goal here is simple: find a way to drown the submarine and leave the hangar. And since we'll have to face those divers underwater, giving us a harpoon make a lot of sense. Fights underwater are different. They require to be close to the enemy to be able to kill, since our harpoons drop extremely quickly. It's honestly not a bad time, and it only happened once in the entire game. So it is good that they took the time to make underwater combat. Once we got rid of the divers, we'll swim a bit further and reach the next level, which is another hangar leading on the Key 33, where we have to meet with Carrington. But before meeting with him, we'll have to cross a whole level, and we'll use that time to talk about the graphics of the game. For a game that is 20 years old, 13 is still holding up remarkably well, and doesn't seem too ugly. Many things show the game's age, such as the UI, or the fact you cannot select the level you want to play without a code, but we've already talked about this. If the game did age well, it is mostly because the game aimed for a comic book feel. The graphics were made in cel shading, and that helped keep a game good looking even 20 years later. I am one of those people that think that PS1, N64 or PS2 graphics still looks good and have a lot of charm, but I know that not everyone thinks the same, and for those, 13 should stand the test of time and still be enjoyable to play or watch. As we finally get out of those hangars, we're greeted with another boss, this time a freaking helicopter. After shooting a boatload of rockets at it, it finally crashed and opened up the way to the key. There, we'll meet Amos and Carrington. We are now working with the FBI. Our goal is to stealthily eliminate the guards and prevent the alarm from being raised. And to do this, we'll be armed with a silenced pistol with only 13 bullets. This mission is also one of my favorites, but it doesn't leave many rooms for mistakes. We'll have to hide bodies, or the alarm will inevitably ring. Once we've dealt with the guards, we'll now have to spy the meeting of the conspirators. Until they notice us, we've got to hurry and shut down the elevators to prevent them from fleeing. Now is the time for action, hand in hand with the FBI. I have to say that I always love those missions, where the AI is helping us. Even if it doesn't change much gameplay-wise, it does help immerse yourself in the universe. Which is maybe a reason why I love the Metro series, but I digress. Two bosses await us, Jasper Winslow, also known as number 9, and Clayton Willard, which is number 5. Both are taken by surprise and will go down easily. Once both are dead, we'll head to the Sanctuary, where a meeting of the conspirators will take place. How do we know, you may ask? Well, we found a paper inside Willard's suit. The Sanctuary is his property. As you can probably tell, we're almost at the end of the game. The Sanctuary is another stealth mission where we need to avoid raising the alarm. Enemies here are trained and dangerous mercenaries, but for this mission we'll have a few interesting weapons. To begin with, we'll have the upgraded crossbow, with a magazine holding up to 3 bolts, and it's amazing. But that's not all, we'll have throwing knives, a pistol equipped with a silencer, and 2 Uzi as well. At first, we'll cross some kind of garden, reminding me a bit of a maze, to finally arrive on the front door. There, we'll screw up a bit, and we'll have to shoot 2 people with our AK that we found on a dead body. Luckily, areas here are separated, and screwing up once doesn't affect the next area. Since there is no way to open the front door, we'll continue searching the garden. We'll find a small pool with an underwater passage that leads to a well. There, 2 guards are talking, and... We'll manage that quite badly, but the crossbow is simply too good of a weapon. We'll cross the outside wall of the castle and jump from a cliff to another one. This will lead us just right where we want to go, but before that, we'll have to pass through one last area full of wards. Once done, 13 will remember things, and we'll head to the church in order to start the next phase of our infiltration of the Sanctuary. Once more, we're gonna have to be sneaky. This time, we'll have to find a place where the conspiracy is meeting up. Most enemies here will wield crossbow and throwing knives, which is gonna help us immensely to not run out of bolts. Enemies here are placed to fulfill the perfect assassin fantasy, and since raising an alarm will be failure of the mission, it is quite understandable that they remain possible to be killed without alerting one another, even if it's a bit on the easy side. Later on, an enemy will enter the room to look for a friend, but that event is scripted and can only happen once you reach that part of the level. After this, we'll enter the museum. At first no problem, but upon activating a secret stash, a few enemies will spawn and try to kill us. We'll then open a secret door to the next map. We now continue our descent into Sanctuary in order to spy on the conspirators. This mission is very much a continuation of the previous one. Lots of crossbow action and stealth kills. We also still have to prevent the AI from raising the alarm. This map feels more like catacombs, while the previous one felt more like the inside of an old castle, but we'll eventually start gaining some heights toward the end to spy on the conspirators. The conspiracy seems to want to replace the government and take control of the country with their military, the Spads. They plan to start Operation Total Raid tomorrow morning. We now have to escape the Sanctuary. Things will be getting much louder all of a sudden. As we drop with our grappling hook, we are met with fanatics attacking us. After killing a few of them, the Sanctuary will take fire. We have to hurry. We'll meet more of these crossbow-wielding fanatics on our way. Yes, I'm slightly obsessed with crossbows. Next level starts outside of the Sanctuary. We'll now have to get to the cliff and wait for the reinforcement to pick us up. Obviously, changing level didn't help those fanatics grow a heart. They'll try everything they possibly can to get rid of us. I do believe this is the shortest mission in the entire game, and once we'll take the zipline, kill all the henchmen, and finally get rid of the choppers, we'll be out of here. Next, and last string of missions is gonna be in the SSH-1 base. We'll disguise ourselves as the Colonel Marshall and accompany Senator Walter Sheridan, brother of the defunct President William Sheridan, to the command station. That's if everything went according to plan. Due to the staff being overworked, President Galbraith decided to allow fewer people inside. We've got to find another way. We've went from some of the best missions in the game, with the Sanctuary, to a more bothersome one. The SSH-1 base is full of GI, and we cannot really hurt them, but they won't hesitate to shoot us down like a dog in the backyard. This whole mission will have us trying to sneak around and take out every GI in the area in order to find a way in. We'll also start with only a gun, and it doesn't even have a silencer, but in the end, what will it change? We are not gonna use anything here anyway. Once we're done breaking chairs on the back of all the soldiers of this area, and probably leaving a few of them crippled forever, we'll take the elevator down to do more of the same. After a while, we'll overhear the President Galbraith having a conversation with Calvin Wax, the Secretary of Defense, that seems to have changed Galbraith's bodyguards for the Spads. Short after, a guard will go to the toilet, will grab a chair, and commit one of the worst crimes known to mankind, attack the poor fellow as he's releasing himself. We'll neutralize another guard, open a door, and that's it for that level. The snooze fest is over. The beginning of the next mission will have us face a few more GI, at first. But not for long. We will very soon have access to an armory, where we'll be able to grab a few grenades and ammo. An obvious hint that things are about to go wrong, and it won't take long. Next room we'll cross, we'll be ambushed by the Spads. They've taken the President hostage, and we've got to help him. But those Spads aren't alone. General William Stanwell, or Number 3 if you prefer, is with them, and we'll have to kill him to save the President. Not a very hard fight. Number 3 has a M60, or a Gatling gun if you want, but doesn't take bullets and grenades very well. We've got the President, but he lost consciousness. We'll have to carry him to safety to the GIs. As we press forward, we'll be getting ambushed by a few Spads. We'll leave the President behind for now and get rid of them. Not long after we'll meet with the GIs, as they are currently busy fighting with the Spads. We'll leave the President with them and give them a hand. We'll neutralize the Spads in this area. The GIs will open up the way for us, but they have to remain behind to protect the President. We're going in there alone. Calvin Wax is responsible for the coup. We have to stop Operation Total Red. We'll quickly meet with Walter Sheridan, that is imprisoned here, with his 2 secretaries. He'll lend us a hand if we can get him out of there. There is a lot of them in there. But before going in, we'll have access to another armory, and this one is much more generous than the previous one. I do admit that I like it, when games throw you an armory full of weapons like this before a big fight. It feels satisfying. To get to Calvin, we have to enter the control room and we won't escape a fight. But we won't ever be more ready than we are now. We'll cook a grenade, throw it, and then pick up our M60. Once all enemies are out, we'll corner Calvin. Calvin will try to call General Stanwell for help. Little did he know that he's already dead. Seeing himself out of options, Calvin Wax, now revealed to be Number 2, will kill himself and activate the auto-destruction sequence. We still have a chance to get out of here alive. Walter Sheridan knows the code, and he's ready to help us. Once the door is opened, the level ends. We are now racing against time. We gotta hurry and stop the auto-destruction as quickly as possible. Upon arriving in the control room, we'll see that everything is powered by a few generators. We'll lockpick 2 doors and destroy everything in sight. That's it, we've stopped the destruction. On our way back, we'll notice a third and last armory. This isn't over yet, we have one last boss fight before we can leave. The Mongoose is a piece of work. Easily the hardest boss fight in the entire game. He's cheap as hell, do billions of damage while taking almost none. He's also slippery, like his name could suggest. We're supposed to use the toxic fume to stun him, but that's really gimmicky and hard to execute. This is definitely the one fight that I do not regret the remake having made easier. As we're about to kill the Mongoose, he falls in a hole. We are now joined by Jones, Carrington, and Sheridan, and will evacuate the place from the emergency exit.
Don't tell me you have no information about my past, General.
Son, the day I recruited you, I didn't ask for your resume. I've always hired my boys based on their skills, and you were a cut above.
What about Jones?
You always appreciated her discretion. Hey, she's invited too. Maybe she'll know something.
We have one last mission before the end, some sort of epilogue. We won't have to fight here, so let's just enjoy the firework. It's now pretty obvious that we won't meet every single member of the conspiracy in this game. We are responsible for the death of number 2, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11 and 12. 13 was dead before the game starts. Number 17 is still alive. As for the others remaining, they either got arrested or shot during a raid from the FBI on the sanctuary.
Carrington is anxious to speak with you. Go see him. After that, I've got a few words for you myself.
Over there! Look!
Where'd Wally go? He's got to see this.
Hey, Fly, why don't you go and get him?
I'm begging you, Wally! Give me back my son!
We had a deal, Kim! You had a chance to get rid of 13! Why didn't you? This is the mongoose. I repeat, this is the mongoose. Number 1, do you copy?
Number 1 here. I copy loud and clear.
Can you see him? Who's number 1? Tell me, quick!
Are the fireworks not to your liking, Mr. Fly?
And finally, that's it. Walter Sheridan is number 1, and the game ends on a cliffhanger. There is multiple ways to know what's happening afterward. If you're an avid reader, great news for you. 13 is a series of comic book created by Jean Van Hamme and drawn by William Vance, heavily inspired by the unfortunate events related to John Kennedy's death, but also by the Jason Bourne series of novels created by Robert Ludlum. And that's probably the best way to know what's happening after the game's events. The only problem is that the game isn't exactly the same as the comics, as the developers change a few things here and there. The game also covers only the first 5 books out of 18, so as you can imagine now, the story goes on for much longer. Apparently there was a side-scrolling platform game released for mobile phones by Gameloft almost 20 years ago, called 13 Covert Identity, that followed the events of the game, but I have no idea if that thing is even still playable, and even if it was, how good that thing is to begin with. There also was an adventure game called 13 Lost Identity, but then again, it's pretty obscure. I also have heard of a short series of 2 episodes covering the events of the comic book called 13 The Conspiracy, was later on continued under the name 13 The Series, but I honestly cannot attest to the quality of either, as I didn't watch it myself. And finally, there was the remake released in 2020 and remade in 2022. I've played that remake, we'll talk about it in a few seconds. But before that, I'd like to say that I do not particularly like to whine about games. I do think that I have overall a more positive outlook about them than the average person. But since we're about to compare 2 games, and there is a reason why I made the entire video about the original and not the remake, I'm probably gonna say a few bad things about it, and it will look worse than it really is. In all honesty, 13 Remake isn't even that bad, but if you're not into video games the same way I am, and by that I mean that I consider that you have no time to waste with an inferior version of a game, if you could play the better one, then the classical version is superior in many ways that we'll mention here. To begin with, 13 and 13 Remakes are partially 2 different games. Partially, because while on the surface they have a lot of things in common, such as the story, level design, weapons, or soundtrack, they also play very differently. The developers decided to go with a gameplay that feels more like what you'd see in a modern military shooter for the remake. They decided to add an iron sight, a sprint button, and to scrap the inventory completely to add a button for the health kits, lockpick, and grappling hook, which make them much easier to use. They also modified weapon balance. The crossbow now deals relatively high damage in the body, the knife as well. Headshots are no longer always needed. The pistol now only has 10 bullets in the magazine instead of 13. The sniper went from 10 bullets to 6. Each weapon also now have reloading animations. Some of them take much longer to reload. The most obvious example is the M60, obviously, that used to reload quite quickly in the classic version, while it takes a while in the remake. I have to admit though that the knives became much easier to use and less clunky in the remake. That's not all, they also modified the missions where a weapon might appear. The pistol with a silencer appears a bit later, while the upgraded crossbow appears a bit earlier. It might seem like nothing, but all these changes alter heavily the feeling of the game, as it is supposed to modernize the game, but it also makes it much more generic. Not because of the changes by themselves. It feels generic because it simply feels off in this game. The remake isn't an awful game, not that version at least, but it really feels rushed. It feels that the people making the game didn't really understand what they were remaking, and just made change for the sake of changing and being different from the original. I'm not blaming the poor folks, as I'm sure that they had very little time to work on this, but I can clearly confirm that Ubisoft's team were more talented back then. They had a better vision about what to do and how to do it. Let's see that mission that I love so much in Emerald Base. It's not even my favorite in the remake. I do like a few missions of the remake, but not that one. Why? Well, look at this mess. You're waiting for enemies to show up close to their bodies, to shoot them like bunnies. It's not even harder than the original mission. It feels less satisfying, it doesn't fulfill anything, it's boring. Now, the escape with Carrington, it almost feels like they didn't have the time to properly finish that part. Nobody's trying to stop you really. That scene on the rooftop that honestly makes me laugh more than anything. I'm glad that I'm able to laugh at it, because otherwise it would be sad. The FBI agents in the third mission that are now scripted to die and cannot be saved. It's not a big deal though. Maybe I'm nitpicking a bit there. It's small detail that help people truly love a game, and the remake fails at almost every single one of them. One more. Here the classic version swarm you with soldiers. A few of them try to ambush you as soon as you pass in front of them. The AI isn't particularly bright, but that very simple trick will be done multiple times throughout the game, while the remake sends you one armored soldier in order to take you out. Obviously, difficulty aside, having the AI trying to trap you is gonna be more memorable than just having to throw a grenade on a lone soldier to kill him. Difficulty-wise, the remake is inferior. It isn't balanced properly and is too easy, even on the hardest difficulties, most notably due to a few changes to the game's hardest missions in order to make them easier. While the classic, without being a terribly hard game, has a few missions that will require a restart in case of mistakes. Sometime like in the submarine, it is slightly die and retry, but nothing terribly frustrating either. The classic version clearly has a better balance in everything difficulty related, and it's not even close. The good moments of having a tighter difficulty outweigh the sometimes worse moments where you feel like you need to know the mission perfectly to succeed. The cameras do not work in the remake, you simply cannot see through them. They also remove the skill system that you unlock through hidden documents in the remake. Now, those documents unlock some sort of gallery, which is pretty cool too. The remake also scrapped the fight underwater against the divers, and replaced it with nothing. Both games have multiplayer, but only the original features bots. The remake also is missing a few game modes that the original used to have. I do believe you'll have more chance to find people playing the original than the remake anyway, but you simply cannot start a game of multiplayer without anybody in the remake, while the original can. I think you've got the gist of it, right? I'm gonna stop there with the bad examples, because I could tell you a few more things that the remake does worse, but I'm really not there to execute that game. I just want it to be clear to everyone. Yes, the classic version is better, as everybody says. The remake isn't a great game. It's average. It does some alright things like most shooters do. It's like junk food, a game that you play once and then will never play again once ended. Is it a terrible time? It wasn't for me, but if you desire the best 13 can offer you, play the original. Here is a few things that the remake does well. It offers a level selection, unlike the classic game that required cheats for that. But unfortunately, remove the feature where we keep the same weapons and ammunition from a mission to the next. It also offers better reloading animations than the original, that just have one for the pistol, and that's all. It's also much easier to die from a fall in the classic version than the remake, that is being much more lenient with that. Some items such as the bottle, ashtray, and glass shards become projectiles instead of being melee, which is an upgrade. Joan's design in the remake also seems closer to how she looks in the comic book, though none of the games really seems to nail the aura she has. Since I've played 13 on PC, I did try to play the older version of the remake for fun. So I'm talking about the one from 2020, not 2022. I've played the last patch and I didn't go much further than 40 minutes of playtime, because I've met a pretty nasty bug that made me understand why that game was received that badly at release. Please note that this is the game after all the patches were done, not day one. So in the end, I suppose we can still applaud the developers of Tower 5 Studio for fixing that mess in only 1 year. Now that we are done talking about the remake, let's simply end this video by talking about the story. More precisely, what happened in the game and why. The game takes place in an alternate reality, where the President of the United States of America is named William Sheridan. His fate will be very similar to the fate of John Kennedy, as he will be killed by a sniper. Steve Rowland, more well known as Number 13, is the killer and one of the 20 members of the conspiracy. What Steve didn't expect though is to be the target of the Mongoose only a few days later, a famous hitman hired by the 20 in order to silence Steve and make him the perfect scapegoat. Steve, in his dying breath, will tell his story to his wife, Kim Carrington, daughter of a general but also Number 17. With the help of her father, General Carrington, and a former member of the SPADs named Jason Fly, Kim prepared a plan to avenge her dead lover, a plan to have Number 13 comes back to life. General Carrington accepted Kim's idea, as William Sheridan used to be a friend of his. Jason Fly knew Steve Rowland very well, as they both served in the same regiment. Steve used to be Jason's superior and rival, so it's not like Jason was the wrong person for that job. Both Steve and Jason were remarkably efficient with everything related to killing people or surviving. Jason eventually accepted to become Number 13 and underwent surgery to change his appearance to become a ghost that the conspiracy was meant to fear. It is unknown why Jason Fly accepted the deal. Maybe love for his country? Who knows? Once Jason became Number 13 and finally healed from his surgery, 17 made a plan to trap Number 1 and to offer a possibility to Number 13 to unmask him. Everything was supposed to take place on a boat. 13 would be alone, but Major Jones and Carrington wouldn't be that far. That night, nothing went according to plan. The Mongoose was on the ship with his henchmen. As 13 tried to escape, he got shot in the head by the Mongoose, leading to a total amnesia of what happened that night and who hid behind the name of Number 1. Later on, Jason would wake up on the beach and be helped by a lifeguard named Janet. That girl that saved his life will be rewarded with a quick death by a few hitmen looking for 13. What happened next? You know it. We've seen the game together earlier, and while it is slightly different from the comic book, the reason why those conspirators did all of this and their plan remain the same. William Sheridan and John Kennedy share a lot of similarities. I've said it already a few times. In this reality, William Sheridan ended up being assassinated in order to set up a coup that would allow the 20 to take control of the country. For this, they first needed Sheridan to die, and to be replaced by his vice president, Galbraith, a puppet of some sort, heavily monitored by Number 2, Calvin Wax. Toward the end of the game, the goal of the Operation Total Red was to take Galbraith hostage and threaten the whole country with nukes in order to take control of it. The conspirators' ultimate goal was to turn the USA into a totalitarian state. Now, why does 13 remember things at the Sanctuary? I honestly do not know. He used to be a SPADS and a high-ranking officer at that, but is it enough to see that much? I honestly do not know. We could also ask why did Number 1 help us stop the missiles, but I think it's only logical to realize that the Operation Total Red was a fluke by that time, and the only thing he had to gain by not helping us was death. The game and comics aren't telling the exact same story, from what I understand, so there might be things that don't make sense in the game, such as, for example, why would a few extremely wealthy and powerful individuals want to give up their life for someone they do not even know the identity of? As a reminder, only Calvin Wax knew the identity of Number 1. Maybe those people believed that a totalitarian regime was the way to bring the USA back to glory, but altruism isn't very often a quality that you find in rich people. Maybe it was instead a way to grow even more rich. But then, why would a few of them accept to die for the cause, instead of spilling the beans? The game doesn't really take the time to explain any of that. I'm not implying that there is absolutely no sense to their actions, because I'm sure the comic book explains that much better than the game does. I'm simply saying that the game doesn't offer us those answers. 13 was supposed at first to be a series of games, but those plans were cancelled when the game sold poorly. Maybe everything was gonna be explained in great length in the sequel. Its failure to sell well is to put on gaming's Hall of Shame, next to the Time Splitters license not receiving a game for now almost 20 years. I'd be tempted to say that we could hope for a sequel to 13 by Microids, given all the efforts they went through to make sure that the remake end up in a playable state despite its low sales, but that will probably never be the same as what we could have gotten 20 years ago. That's all, and to end this video on a brighter note...
Here!